The parts of ourselves that we fear the most haunt us, not ghosts. I need help, doctor. What do you think about Brian? Brian? Hurting her. Your wife? Yes, I don't want to, but it's there. Here, do you think you're dangerous, Brian? Brian, what does it matter? The thoughts come anyway. It matters because you're here, asking for help. Do you know why these thoughts come, Brian? No, they just there. Always. I don't invite the thoughts. I just can't stop them. What exactly are these thoughts, Brian? They're not normal, doctor. And what isn't normal to you? How do I explain it? They just happen. I'll walk through the city feeling like the happiest person alive, smiling, and then it just appears. What appears, Brian? You need to be specific. But what appears, Brian? A thought. A thought? About what? Death, doc. Suicidal thought, then? No. Not mine. Who is then? Is there someone specific? It's the worst part. It doesn't matter who. The thought just appears. And anyone who crosses my path could be a target. Do you remember when these thoughts started? I was 5. The thought would just appear and take over. All right, Brian, take it slow. I can see you're shaking. Breathe deeply. There you go. Now exhale. Feeling a little better? Since I was just 5, I knew this thought was rooted in me, that I'd never get rid of it. Despite the unpopularity of exercises, even they only take 10 minutes or so. Thinking about someone's death doesn't necessarily mean there's a problem. Everyone thinks about death. It's normal. Death and life, they're connected. How exactly does this thought disturb your daily life? I was sitting in the waiting room at the dentist's office. Just me and a woman. We didn't know each other. We never even looked at each other. But in my head, I started thinking about peeling the skin from her face inch by inch while her screams shattered the silence. Sounds disturbing, doesn't it? Have you ever acted on these thoughts, Brian? Hurt anyone? Killing myself 3 times so far. So the thought tells you to kill yourself. No, doctor, it tells me to kill and hurt everyone around me. But you don't act on it. That's good, Brian. So why do you hurt yourself instead? It's the only way to stop me. You're putting too much weight on these thoughts. They're part of life, Brian. Hundreds pass through our minds every second. You can't even remember all of them. It doesn't mean something's wrong with you. Are you saying, doctor, that it shouldn't bother me? Even now, while talking to you, I'm imagining stabbing a pen into your left eye and twisting it like a screwdriver, watching you scream and bleed everywhere. It's not pleasant to hear that. But when we're upset, angry, or sad, we think all sorts of things. Some good, some bad. That's normal. The difference lies in what you do once these thoughts appear. I think I'm damaged goods, doctor. I always have been. My parents sensed it right away. Something abnormal. That's why they abandoned me, left me. They were afraid of me. Maybe you're exaggerating a bit, Brian. There could be dozens of reasons your parents left, none of them your fault. When do I feel like this? When someone finds out they were abandoned, they start blaming themselves. They need a reason, a justification for why it happened. And without answers, people turn on themselves, believing they aren't good enough, that something's wrong with them. So, you think that's my problem, doctor? That I blame myself for my parents leaving? Oh, isn't that it? Even as a kid, my guardians were scared of me. Violet, my caretaker, told me she slept with one eye open at night so I wouldn't sneak in and slit their throats. Imagine hearing that at 5 years old, doctor. Tell me it wouldn't scar you. You're right, Brian. Saying something so horrible to a 5-year-old is damaging. But it's not proof that you're broken or that your parents left because of you. As a kid, I was always afraid of myself. Whenever someone yelled or hit me, I'd endure it. I wouldn't fight back. I let them finish until they left me alone. They thought I was a freak because I didn't fight back. They said I enjoyed the pain. They called me a sadist, but they didn't know the real truth, doctor. And what's that truth, Brian? They're alive because I didn't fight back. You think that's the only reason you didn't retaliate? That it couldn't be something else? What else, doctor? There's nothing else. The first time a classmate hit me at school, it hurt so much that I cried. They all laughed. But I wasn't laughing, doctor. I was trembling, not from fear of the classmate, not of him. I was afraid of the thoughts that came to mind. What thoughts, Brian? Can you describe them? I saw myself biting his forearm with all my strength. My teeth sank into his skin, into his flesh. I tasted his blood trickling from my mouth as he screamed. I saw myself tearing at his veins, pulling them like chewing gum. But it didn't end there, Brian. And I stomped on his head over and over. It wasn't enough, said Van. Brian, none of that was real. You know that, don't you? I said. But the feeling was real, wasn't it? That means the thoughts are real too. Hate, love, anger. None are tangible, but we feel them. They're real. Why should these thoughts be different? They're part of me, aren't they? Listen, Brian, you're not that scared child anymore. You're married, you have a family, children. You should focus on what you have now, not what you lost. But that's what I'm doing, doctor. That's why I came to you, to lock me up, keep me away from people. You think you should be locked up, Brian? Absolutely. The sooner the better, before it's too late. Are you afraid of hurting your family? Sometimes I catch myself watching my wife, and I see myself snapping her neck. Her body twitched on the kitchen floor, gasping for air. Does your wife upset you so much that you want her dead? I love my wife. I'd never hurt her, but the thoughts just come. I can't control them. I don't want to think that way, but they come whenever they want. Brian, you've had these thoughts for 40 years. Don't you think you would have hurt someone by now if they really controlled you? When I was a kid, I tortured animals, not because I hated or feared them, just because I could. I wanted to know what it felt like to hurt something helpless. We had a dog. I loved him, played with him, fed him. But whenever he ran off and didn't return when I called, I'd give in to the thought. I'd lose control. Strike, I'd hurt my own hand. I knew what I was doing. I hated myself for it. But I didn't stop. I stopped when my hand hurt so badly I couldn't continue. Slow down, Brian. Everyone's damaged in some way. Some more, some less. The important thing is to find the cause. Do the process, Canning said. People die. I felt the pain, but it never worked. I felt the thoughts would go away when I grew up. When I started a family, I wasn't alone, but nothing changed. Everyone sees me as a great guy, friendly and always cheerful. But all I want is to unleash my rage. It doesn't matter who or why. Maybe you could talk to your wife about this. Your love for her has stopped you from hurting her, just as it has all these years. Josh's phone buzzed and he looked up to find Tori. Sometimes I feel sad that I don't spend time with my kids like other fathers do. I tell myself I love them and know that feeling is real, but I feel like I'm not a good father. I yell at them. I'm always agitated, even though I try to be calm and gentle. It breaks my heart, Doctor. I'd give my life for them, but I'm afraid of what these thoughts might drive me to do. Thoughts about your children. Yes, Doctor, sometimes I think it would be better if I were alone, locked up somewhere without anyone I could hurt. I think about killing them in their sleep. I catch myself watching them through the cracked door while they sleep. I hate myself for it, but I keep watching them with the eyes of a bloodthirsty beast. And then I see them lying there, so innocent, so peaceful, and I start to cry. What kind of person even thinks about doing that to his children? A person who's never had anyone to help him. Brian, you're not a bad person. You're a good husband to your wife and a good father to your children. That's the only real truth in your life. I thought I'd found a way to keep these thoughts under control all these years. What way was that, Brian? I started writing stories. Every story I write is filled with the images my mind projects every day, every moment. No matter what I'm doing, who I'm with, the thoughts are always there. That's good. It's a smart way to get those thoughts out of your head. This writing has become a problem. Each story gets scarier and more horrifying. The things I write about are so vile and disgusting that no one even wants to read them. They feel too real. Just remember, Brian, these are only stories you're writing. Just as thoughts are the only things you think about, none is real. But here we are talking about it, aren't we? I'm tired of talking, Doctor. I know the real me isn't a good person. Deep down, there's a sadist, a sociopath, who wants to cause pain, to torture people and watch the world burn, and I know it. I hate it. And I can't live without it. If that's truly what you want, then all right. We can arrange for you to be admitted to a psychiatric facility for a set period. We'll observe what happens. How does that sound? I'm not comfortable with being locked up. That other part of me, it's already thinking about how to crack open your skull if it had control. Are you saying you have these thoughts while we're talking? You have no idea, Doctor, what's been going through my mind while we talk. Whatever we're discussing, every possible version of this meeting plays in my head. I'm imagining all the ways I could kill you, ways to make you suffer, the worst possible pain. You look perfectly normal, Brian. That's the thing, Doctor. I'm not. At the stroke of 6, Janardon, nicknamed as Johnny Walker by his friends, stepped out for a walk, as his wont. The dawn looked normal. There was nothing ominous. There were neither thunder and lightning, nor were there dark, spooky clouds, and the black cat didn't cross his path. How could Janardon know that would be the last walk of his life? It was the only time of the day one could go for a walk. Janardon was nicknamed so because he would walk rain or shine, and his friends appreciated his die-hard spirit. The main road in that middle-class layout got forever busy from 7 a.m. onwards. Johnny could step out on the street safely whenever he came across potholes on the footpath. The street was lined with shops of all kind, and here and there were a few trees still holding onto their roots and offered some shade to the commuters who waited for their buses under the benign shade of the tree. A woman sold newspapers, and a cobbler had set up a shop under this shade. Few auto rickshaws, too, were parked, At a few hundred meters from his apartment stood a darshini and hosted some people who dropped by for their morning cuppa. The street vendors, mostly women, would start setting up their vegetables after 9 a.m. Johnny would walk for about 15 minutes when he would reach a small park. Some of his friends would also reach the park at that time. They would gossip for about half an hour, and he would return home at the stroke of 7 a.m. His wife gets up by 5:45 a.m. and prepares the filter coffee which Johnny would sip before stepping out. She would get in for a bath once she has prepared coffee for her husband. Soon prayer followed for about 10 minutes. Her first coffee was only after that. She would then start preparing for breakfast by the time her husband returns. It was almost 7 now, and she thought she heard the doorbell ringing. She opened the door, didn't find anyone, but unusually felt a draught of wind passing her into the house. She felt a bit spooky. 2 more people were coming down the stairs, and she felt a bit spooky. She wondered why Johnny had not returned as usual. She picked up the newspaper and started reading. The paper reported horror stories of a spike in road accidents involving unwary pedestrians. In a neighboring locality, one youth was knocked out by a speeding municipal bus. It sent a chill through her spine. It was already 7:15 when her anxiety levels started spiking up. She called her son Ramachandran and reported that his father had not returned from his customary walk. Her son advised her to wait for another 15 minutes. Ramachandran started getting anxious, as he too had read about the road accidents, and began dressing up to visit his parents' home, which was a 15-minute drive from his home. At 7:30, when he was ready to get out, his mother rang once again and worriedly reported that his father was yet to reach. He assured his mother he would be there in another 15 minutes and informed his wife and left home. Upon reaching home in his scooter, he found that his father had not reached as yet. With his mother, he went out and traced the path to the park which his father usually took. There was no trace of him. They went straight to the nearby police station and raised a complaint. The sub-inspector cursorily looked at the FIR and asked for a photograph of Janardhan. Sub-inspector's name was Ediyappa, and he was in the twilight of his winnings as a policeman. His career, including his sweat, reeked of corruption. Suddenly, he felt as if someone was watching him from behind and turned around to look, and he felt a prickle on his neck. Ediyappa has been reading the Garuda Purana of late. He got psyched up and wondered if the description of punishments written about in the text as retribution for crimes was indeed true. He shuddered, thinking if Janardhan's spirit was present in the form of a ghost in his office room. He assured Ramachandran's quick search and was as usual about to file the application. He felt something holding his hand, and he took a photocopy of the FIR and signed a copy and gave it to Ramachandran, as per the correct procedure. He called out for his constable and the driver and proceeded to the Toyota van. As he got into the van, he felt an unusual draught of wind. Maybe this case was an opportunity to atone for his omissions and commission as his long career, he told himself. They went along the path that Janardhan usually takes, as described by Ramachandran, and stopped by a few shops that were open to inquire anything untoward had happened in the morning. He was informed of the accident in the morning when an old man got knocked out by a speeding Mahindra Black Scorpio. The tea vendor said another Good Samaritan had taken the old man to the nearby Teresa Hospital, a private one. At the hospital, Dr. Sita Raman informed Aglamenti that the patient had died due to cardiac arrest and their attempt to revive him, much as the Indian economy had failed. She added it was an act of God, perhaps. Ediyappa said the accident was a reckless act and the perpetrator needs to be punished, unlike our leaders who get away with murders in daylight. Dr. Sitaraman asked her assistant to help the police with the formalities and said they would do a post-mortem and release the body. Arnab Chatterjee was in a good mood that morning. He had received a communication that his transfer to Kolkata was imminent and a formal letter would follow. He was the general manager in charge of the company's showroom-cum-workshop of Yesman and Yesman, which manufactured the Scorpio, the vehicle that got involved in the road accident that morning. The good mood changed when he reached the showroom and was informed of the Scorpio waiting at the workshop for repair and refurbish to hide the dent from the accidents. Arnab was a fan of Vyomkesh Bakshi, a Desi detective. He quickly took photos of all the evidence visible on the vehicle and emailed the same to his personal ID. Just then, he got a call from the MLA owner of the Scorpio and got instructed to destroy all evidence. Being an Arnab and a Chatterjee, he thought, how could he remain a mute spectator to this accident, and walked across to his office and placed the mobile on the table. He called the rec section and asked for the telephone at the local inspector's office. Just then his mobile trilled, and as he took the call, he heard the voice, Inspector Ejapa, speaking and said, "What is the matter?" Arnab replied politely, stating that, "You had called me, sir, but anyway I wanted to speak with you," and informed him about the Scorpio and sent the pictures through WhatsApp. As he finished the call, he wondered how the phone got connected. He clicked on the link below and saw Jabari's Scorpio was connected through WhatsApp. Gap. And what is the matter with Lulena? It was like the scene in a paranormal series he was watching on Netflix. Idiapa felt both good and bad. The good part was now he has the evidence, but the bad part was the vehicle involved the MLA. He let out a sigh and invoked the name of Narendranatha, the almighty god of present times. He then started for the showroom to inspect the vehicle and called for the forensic team to be there with their toolkit. Unruly son of the MLA, Surya was at the wheels when the accident took place in the morning that ended the walk of Johnny forever. Like his namesake in the parliament, he was brash and arrogant, being the son of a powerful MLA. Even then, he shat in his pants and took the vehicle home by another route and confessed to his father. MLA called for the driver Kalu, who was a Dalit, and told him to take the vehicle to the garage, and said he should tell the police if ever a case was filed that he was at the wheels in the morning. Like many other Dalits in the country, he was made a sacrificial goat. Then the MLA had spoken to Arnab. The forensic team had collected all evidence and found some strong handprints of the driver at the wheel. They took Kalu's palm print as he claimed he was driving the vehicle, but according to the forensic report, Kalu's print and the one found on the steering wheel didn't match. Idiapa got surprised to see one of the photos that Arnab had sent included that of the driver who was wearing gloves. He dialed Kalu's mobile, who said he always wore gloves due to COVID, and he was the one driving the vehicle in the morning. It was past 5 as he walked out of the communal cafeteria into the lobby of the prison. It was past 5 p.m. when Idiapa sighed and thought to himself that he has to make the difficult call to MLA's home in the Dollar Colony, and aptly so. He was stopped at the gate and asked to make an entry. It was then a light bulb exploded in Idiapa's mind. He quickly got down and asked to see the CCTV recording taken in the morning. Time was 6 a.m. when the black Scorpio was spotted at the gate. He zoomed on the vehicle but could not identify the driver clearly. As he fast-forwarded the recording, he saw the black Scorpio again at about 6:30 a.m. and the vehicle stopped for the gate to open. This time, the driver could be seen when zoomed in, and it wasn't Shirley Kalu. The driver was a teenager who was often in the news for notorious activities. He immediately took a copy of the recording in his pen drive. As expected, the MLA Adityanath, who reputedly behaved as if he was a law unto himself, called for the scapegoat, his driver Kalu. But Adityanath had anticipated this action and requested Adityanath if he could have a private word in his home office. As they entered, once again, Adityanath told him of the forensic mismatch, the gloves habitually worn by Kalu, and the CCTV recording. Idiapa could see that Adityanath was raging, with his face contorting and turning dark. With his scary face, Adityanath gesticulated in a threatening way, but words would not come. Within moments, he seemed to struggle, as if his neck was being constricted and his brow was full of sweat, and fear were written all over his face. He managed to mumble, "Let the law take its course." Idiapa ensured that he had the fingerprints of both Adityanath and his unruly son Surya before leaving the house. A day later, forensic confirmed that the fingerprints on the steering wheel matched with that of Surya. There was an added surprise when Surya, along with his mother, walked into the police station 2 days later, and Surya submitted his confessional statement that he had driven the Scorpio on that fatal morning. Now that Idiapa had an open and shut case, he breathed easy. The expected call from his superiors didn't come. Anyway, as a safeguard, he had made copies of all evidence. His daily reading of the Garuda Purana stoked his fear of burning in hell, and he had spoken to his lawyer friend and worked out an escape route should his superiors or anybody in power brought pressure on him. On the 13th day, when Ramachandra was completing the rites for his father Janardhan, Idiapa registered the case in the district magistrate office. The DM, Justitia, named after the Roman goddess of justice by her parents, realized upon her first reading of the case that it was an open and shut case. She pronounced her ruling on the 30th day. While Surya was sent to a juvenile home, his father, Adityanath, was given imprisonment of 1 year for letting his juvenile son drive his Scorpio willy-nilly. Justitia got surprised to see a bouquet of flowers placed upon her car's steering that evening. She made a mention of that incident to Idiapa, who remarked, "Perhaps the benign spirit had left the flowers as a token of appreciation for your good verdict." Both laughed nervously at this remark. At her home, as she placed the flowers in a vase filled with water, she thought about the broken footpath, which in fact was the reason which forced Janardhan to step onto the street and led to his demise. Whom she could punish and made accountable for this lapse, she asked no one in particular. A senior reporter, Vasan, who was covering the case, published his report on the front page. The headlines read, "Case of the Johnny Walker, Miraculous Spirit of Justice." The report expressed wonder how in 1 month's time from the filing of FIR to the pronouncement of the verdict, the case was closed in flat 30 days. It also mentioned the curious absence of any power play in spite of the ongoing IPL season. The mortal did not make an appearance until 8 days after the final play. In spite of the ongoing IPL season, he praised that Idiapa had done the work cleverly, like the legendary Sherlock Holmes. Idiapa wondered how Vasan got wind of the by decoy spirit mentioned in the headlines. Thus, the case of Johnny Walker got closed, and henceforth he became known for his spirit only.